On today's episode of the J Area podcast, I share my thoughts why I think 10 years in, Kevin Owens will have the best run of his WWE career, as well as my thoughts on the current Jon Moxley and BCC storyline and the current state of the tag team division within WWE. All of this and more on this week's episode. What is going on, pro wrestling fans? Welcome back to the J Area. My name is Jose Ramos Jr., and as we always do on a Monday morning, we discuss professional wrestling. Now, professional wrestling obviously is an ever-evolving story that's filled with twists and turns and evolutions and characters. And I think one of the biggest storylines being told right now in the WWE, although subtle, because it's not really at the forefront over the course of this huge regime change in the Triple H era, I do think it might have huge ramifications and consequences that will follow. Of course, I'm referring to the Kevin Owens heel turn as to when he had jumped and beat down Cody Rhodes after the Bad Blood event. You see, if we were to look back in time, Kevin Owens now being with the WWE for 10 years, it was in 2014 when he would sign with the WWE as a member of the NXT roster. If you remember, it was in the December event of an NXT takeover that he would make his debut by defeating CJ Parker, who obviously now goes by Juice Robinson in All Elite Wrestling. It was that very night that he made his debut, and the same night that Sami Zayn would win the NXT Championship and then suffer a beatdown by his friend Kevin Owens. On night one, Kevin Owens showed you who he is. Time and time again, he has betrayed, he has decimated, he has just, quite frankly, turned on those that trusted him. Sami Zayn is no different. They've had their battles in the past. But what makes this one different, because he's done it time and time again, and he's talked about it openly on WWE TV, whether it was Chris Jericho, whether it was Kofi Kingston, whether it's Sami Zayn the second time. This one is different in a good way. You see, it's a different approach by the WWE. Obviously, everyone who watches, who keeps up with the product, they know it's a work. They know wrestling is scripted. As the old question is, you know it's fake, right? Because everyone loves to ask that kind of a question. But there's a sense of realism when it comes to the way they orchestrated this heel turn for Kevin Owens. We saw subtle changes in his character, especially since the Bash in Berlin event. You saw little characteristics, little tweaks in the Kevin Owens character. You could tell he was conflicted. He wants to be the WWE champion, but he wanted to do it the right way. He didn't want to do it the old way that Kevin Owens would. Take advantage of the injuries, take advantage of the weaknesses, and take advantage, certainly, of his friends. Kevin Owens as the prize fighter, that aggressive, competitive version of himself, we haven't seen him in quite some time. In fact, Kevin Owens has been a babyface for almost over 4 years now, since the beginning of the Bloodline storyline. He's been one of the key enemies for the Bloodline. But nonetheless, the last time he had won a world title was in the summer of 2016. The last time he held a world title was at Fastlane in 2017 on the lead up to WrestleMania 33. Kevin Owens certainly believes that he should be in line for a world title. The sacrifices, the dedication that he has given this company, I don't blame him for feeling like he should be in line for more opportunities. Now, granted, he did get one at Bash in Berlin against Cody Rhodes, but it was seemingly given to him. And that part of Kevin Owens didn't want to accept it. He didn't feel like he earned it. And I get that. But then you noticed when general manager Nick Aldis made the suggestion of Roman Reigns, how quick the switch had flipped. Immediately, Kevin Owens got to thinking, well, why are we going to give it to Roman? He was just champion for 4 years. He had just gotten back after leaving the WWE since his WrestleMania 40 loss to Cody Rhodes. What I like about this storyline is that realism. Kevin Owens attacks Cody Rhodes after the Bad Blood event. In fact, the WWE did not have any members of camera crew or production around when that attack occurred. Fans that were outside the arena, that were near Cody Rhodes' bus, they are the ones responsible for the footage that was uploaded to social media. They are a part of this storyline. That's something different. We haven't seen that. When was the last time we saw something done in such a way to where they're trying to blur the lines between fact and fiction? They also have been doing these videos on Twitter by Kevin Owens where he's expressing his side of the story, because apparently the WWE wants to keep this, hush. They want to keep this low. They don't want this to get out in front of everybody. We saw a couple weeks ago on Friday Night SmackDown, Kevin Owens emerges from the back, interrupts the entrance of Lash Legend and Miss Jackson for their tag team title match, saying how the WWE doesn't want him to speak. They're trying to silence him. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. It's involving Cody Rhodes, the Golden Boy, of course, the WWE champion, Kevin Owens, one of their top stars, and they're looking at it, I think, from a PR standpoint where it's like, these are two of our top guys. We don't want it to seem like we don't have this under control. Look at Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw has constant chaos. Whether it's Bronson Reed, whether it's the Judgment Day, whether it's the Sheamus and Pete Dunne brawl, whether it was CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, constant chaos on Monday Night Raw. SmackDown is a little bit more controlled. There's not as much issues going on in the back. Of course, there's disagreements, but you don't see people just attacking people for no reason. So I feel like with this case, that's why they're trying to make that difference. Of course, Nick Aldis did talk to Randy Orton, and we'll get to Randy Orton's involvement in the storyline soon. But he tells him it's coming from higher up. It's coming from above Nick Aldis, and that leads me to believe it's Triple H who's making the call here. Because Triple H is presented basically as the main authority figure. He's the top guy. Which would be very interesting to see how Randy and he interact, knowing their history. But when it comes to the Kevin Owens aspect of the story, because that's basically the main point of it all, Kevin Owens, it's logical for him. I just mentioned that he was one of the big enemies for Roman Reigns and for the Bloodline. He's been fighting them for 4 years, on and off. So for someone like him, who's seen guys like Sami Zayn, who was a part of the Bloodline, of course, he defected, seeing guys like Cody Rhodes, who had been battling the Bloodline for 2 years, he has a lot of investment in taking down the Bloodline. He and Roman Reigns had done battle at multiple Royal Rumbles, obviously episodes of SmackDown. He finally was a part of the coronation of Cody Rhodes when he had won the title at WrestleMania 40. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn beat the Usos for the tag titles the year prior at WrestleMania 39. So now he sees Cody Rhodes team with Roman Reigns. Yeah, it's against the Bloodline, but you're teaming with the guy that had a stranglehold on the WWE for nearly half a decade. It doesn't sit well with Kevin Owens that's what you're willing to do. You're willing to trust him? Doesn't make sense. That leads to the Bad Blood incident where Kevin Owens jumps Cody Rhodes. A culmination of pent-up frustration. He couldn't take it no more. He had gotten sick of what he had been seeing. Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns side by side when just earlier this year they had one of the more brutal matches of the year. Now, of course, saying that out loud, you have the Hell in a Cell match between McIntyre and Rhodes, or McIntyre and Punk. But that Bloodline Rules match took a lot out of both individuals. And Kevin Owens saw that. And for them to move past it, even though it was just for a one-time thing, keep in mind, Cody and Roman are not best friends. It was just the enemy of my enemy is my friend for tonight. Kevin Owens wasn't having it. And then Randy Orton, who was an ally of both Kevin and Cody, got involved and wanted to, be the peacemaker and keep everyone in line. Kevin Owens struck Randy, so Randy, naturally, his instinct is to strike back. And that hurt Kevin. You heard on the videos online, Kevin Owens talking about, you chose Cody over me. That hurts Kevin. As it makes sense. I think he's looking at it from a, manipulative way, because that's not the perspective you should be taking. But of course, I think it's valid in the approach. He's thinking Randy is siding with Cody, when in actuality, that makes sense too. Randy and Cody have been together since 2008, since their legacy days. If you go even further, 2007, when Cody came into the business, who was one of the guys that he rode with? Randy Orton. So it shouldn't come as a surprise when it comes to who Randy kind of sides with. But from a logical standpoint, Randy Orton has beef with the Bloodline too. They were part of the reason why he was on the shelf for so long. So in Kevin's mind, it would make sense for Randy to side with Kevin, because he's anti-Bloodline. It's also a big story point for Cody Rhodes. It's a demonstration that actions have consequences. Cody Rhodes didn't think becoming champion would be easy. They say it's difficult to become the champion. It can be more difficult to stay champion, to stay at the top. And now that Cody Rhodes has the target on his back, everyone's coming for him from all angles. Whether it was Logan Paul, whether it was AJ Styles, Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline, Kevin Owens now, seemingly Roman Reigns later. The Rock is always, felt as he made his appearance at Bad Blood. But Cody had to come to realize that him teaming with Roman Reigns was going to have a domino effect. That's not something that you just let go. Something that just happens. You're teaming with the guy, as I said, who had a stranglehold on the WWE, decimating competitor after competitor, who had manipulated his own family into doing his own bidding. Caused so much torment for guys like Kevin Owens. So Cody Rhodes, of course, it shouldn't come as a complete shock. Now, in the manner in which it happened, sure. But overall, it demonstrates that these actions have consequences. And it's all leading up to something bigger. I think that Kevin Owens is going to get his shot at Cody Rhodes, possibly at the Survivor Series. If not, I could see it being the Saturday night's main event in December, which would be a good, a marquee matchup for the return of an event such as Saturday night's, main event. But I think that this is just the bridge. This is leading Kevin to be a bigger heel, to be that prize fighter. But ultimately, I think it's going to lead up to Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes down the line. Because Randy Orton's going to start seeing himself the ramifications of Cody's decisions. Where I think, if I was a booking man, I'm thinking Randy Orton versus Cody. Maybe at the Rumble. I kind of want it to be at WrestleMania. But that whole thing with The Rock leads me to believe that that's where Cody's going to be involved. Whether it's going to be The Rock or the Bloodline still, I have to venture to guess Cody will be involved with the Bloodline at WrestleMania, and in some form or fashion. But it's still a story that's ever evolving. In the WWE, it's taking center stage. There's a lot of storylines going on in the WWE, but that one for sure is of my interest. That is because I'm a fan of Cody, because I'm a fan of Kevin, I'm a fan of Randy, and I'm just a fan of seeing the characters evolve in a logical sense, because Kevin is validated in his actions. The best heels, the best villains are those who feel justified. And I think it can be argued that Kevin is justified. Now, we may not like it because it's against Cody, because it's against Randy, but Kevin has a point in all of this. And I'm excited to see where they go with it, especially with the approach of keeping it in realism, keeping it hushed, keeping it's this different sense of a story. We're still searching for answers. They're not giving us the answers. We need to search for them. Just like, so they gave us a little treat on SmackDown this past week. The debut of the Motor City Machine Guns. Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, a couple of TNA legends, long stays in the company. If you've kept up with the channel, you would know I talk about the Motor City Machine Guns and how there was a period in time from like 2008 to 2009 that I was watching TNA Impact. I will confess I'm not a diehard by any means, but I watched it, casually. And one of the reasons why I kept up with it was the Motor City Machine Guns. I enjoyed their matches. I enjoyed their look. I remember vividly their feud with Generation Me, with Max and Jeremy Buck, who you might now know as the Young Bucks. So to see them on WWE TV was surreal. Especially in 2024 with general manager Nick Aldis, who was previously known as Magnus on TNA TV. It was just surreal to see, because that's a team that I didn't really think would ever go to the WWE, because they've been known to be presented as like the land of the giants. And for better or for worse, I'm sure people noticed the size of Sabin and Shelley. They're a little bit on the smaller side, but that does not negate their talent. They have had decades teaming up together. The experience, the chemistry that has been developed between the two cannot be overstated. That's why I'm looking forward to their matchup against DIY, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. These are two teams that I feel like are so alike that we are sure to have an absolute banger of a matchup. And the winner moves on. They get a championship opportunity against the Bloodlines, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. That, again, will be interesting because of that size difference. Regardless of who wins this matchup, it is a huge size difference between the Bloodlines members against this potential number one contender. I don't know if they'll beat the Bloodline. If you ask me, I'm picking the Motor City Machine Guns to win and earn that title match. But will they beat the Bloodline? That's the question, isn't it? I don't know. I could see them losing to the Bloodline, because I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on that just yet, unless it's one of those things where we're getting closer to the War Games matchup and the baby faces cost them the titles. I'm just spitballing here, right? And this is going to lead me to Monday Night Raw. Jey Uso is the Intercontinental Champion. He kind of got involved with the Bloodline here on this episode of SmackDown, not wanting to choose sides. It was clear. He wanted to try to bring the family together. He believes that Solo and the Bloodline, what they're doing is dividing the family. And Solo argues, dividing the family? I'm trying to keep the family together. I'm trying to keep everyone in line. He's trying to maintain the Bloodline. But he asked Jey, are you with me or are you against me? Because that's flat out the question. If you're not with me, you're against me. Jey is not with him. In fact, he's not with anyone. He's on his own. But one of the telling signs here was Jey Uso had said, in regards to Jacob Fatu and the Tongans, they keep staring at me like that and I'll have to do something. Now, he didn't say that verbatim. But that shows that Jey Uso doesn't have any level of intimidation or fear in regards to the Bloodline. That might come back. That might come back to bite him on the ass, to be honest with you. The reason I say that is because he has an Intercontinental Championship matchup this upcoming Monday Night Raw against Braun Breaker. I'm willing to bet that the Bloodline gets involved Whether it's Jacob, the Tongan Solo, whoever, I would not be surprised if they made their way to Monday Night Raw and cost him that Intercontinental Championship. Now, I feel like he's only had the title for about 4 weeks, so that would be a short title reign. But in terms of the story and progressing, it would make logical sense. Now, last week, Jimmy made an appearance on Raw, which led me to believe, okay, maybe the Bloodline gets involved, and this was before we saw them on SmackDown in that interaction. That leads me to believe maybe the Bloodline gets involved, and Jimmy comes, makes the save, helps Jey retain the title, and now we're getting, a little bit of trust, a little bit of goodwill between the brothers. And that's the first step in reuniting the Usos and reuniting the Bloodline. But now I'm thinking, what if Jey Uso loses the title because the Bloodline interferes? So down the line, when the Bloodline has to defend those titles against the Motor City Machine Guns or against DIY, the Usos return the favor and they cost them the matchup, causing them to lose those titles. It's a possibility. That's a possibility. Do I think it'll happen? I'm leaning towards no, but hey, again, in the sense of logic, I don't think you can argue it. And let's stick with the topic of the tag team division, because a couple of weeks ago I had talked about the tag team division and how it needs a little bit of a revamping and how we need to revitalize the tag team division, because on SmackDown, I don't know about you, but the Bloodline I don't feel like needs the tag titles. On Raw, JD and Finn have only defended it once at the time of this recording. But with the return of the War Raiders, with the debut of the Motor City Machine Guns, I feel like those two teams can help inject a little bit of energy into the division itself. And I like the fact that we have two corresponding number one contender tournaments here to crown new champions. It brings a level of interest. It brings a level of excitement to what's going on in the division, and maybe it leads to a title change. Now, whether or not it's both titles or it's one title, I think there certainly needs to be a change. And I think we're more likely going to see it on the Monday Night Raw side. I said my prediction would be the War Raiders. I'm sticking by it. They have a level of momentum on their side. I feel like they're going to plow through the rest of the division, defeat the Judgment Day, and have a good run with those tag titles. On SmackDown, as I said, the Bloodline, I think they're going to reign supreme. But if anybody has anything to say about it, it'll be the Usos. And with that being said, let's stick with SmackDown, because the matchup I'm really looking forward to is Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes. Game 7. The series is tied 3-3, and this time we have a special guest referee in LA Knight. Now, whether the word impartial or unbiased is the one you want to use, I don't know about that, because I don't think he likes either of these guys. But it'll be interesting seeing who comes out on top, because of course they'll be in line for a US title matchup, even though they both will have lost against LA Knight already. If I had to choose, I'm thinking Andrade goes over. That's just my gut telling me, but these matches have managed to deliver every single time, so I have no reason to believe why this wouldn't. It's the 7th matchup in the series, which is outstanding to say, because it's not often that we get these many matches in succession. I think maybe one of the last times we had that was Sheamus and Cesaro, who had done battle in, I believe, 2016, when they had their best of 7. Prior to that, off the top of my head, I can think of Benoit and Booker T in 2005, and their run in WCW as well. But we don't often see a best of 7 series anymore, especially in the WWE, but it should be an athletic contest. It should be a great matchup, and I'm looking forward to it. Of course, we also have another storyline, Cody Rhodes. We talked about Kevin Owens, but he does have a matchup against Gunther at Crown Jewel. And it's for the Crown Jewel Championship. Now, I talked about that on our SmackDown post-show reaction, and mostly about the look of the title. Not a fan of it. I personally think a trophy would have done fine. But hey, they wanted to go with the title, which is okay. It's fine. It is wrestling. But what I liked about Cody Rhodes' segment, because I didn't really talk about this in the post-show reaction until afterward, was the promo he delivered. Cody Rhodes carried his end of the weight and tried to put over this matchup as some kind of cross-promotional matchup. He talked about having guys like Austin versus Goldberg, right? He talked about having guys like Ric Flair and Bockwinkel. Obviously, we all think about Hogan and Flair, but the fact is, he is trying to promote this as this huge cross-promotional matchup, and it should be because Gunther versus Cody is one of the big matches you can have right now. Ever since their interaction at the Royal Rumble in 2023, we've all known that, hey, whenever these two get together, it's going to be a great matchup. So I appreciate that they're really trying to push this, not just so much for the crown jewel title, but as the one-time matchup, the interaction between Cody and Gunther. Now, I don't think it'll be the only time they ever face, but it is the first time, and you don't forget the first. He says there will be a definitive winner, and usually when a babyface says that, they mean it. But I just can't believe it. I still think Kevin Owens gets involved in some way, and he costs Cody the matchup as a way to further their storyline. You could do it a way where the referee and Gunther are both not looking. Maybe they're both incapacitated at some point, and Kevin Owens takes advantage of Cody Rhodes, power bombs him. So when Gunther defeats Cody, in the logic of a heel, he didn't see Kevin Owens. He thinks he won fair and square. He will not assume that responsibility nor the guilt. It helps further Gunther as a heel. It protects the Cody and Kevin storyline, because right now, if you ask me, I don't think Cody needs this win. Cody can take a loss and still be okay. But if Gunther were to lose, I feel like that might hurt Gunther a little bit. Cody can recover from it, no problem. Gunther's the one where I'm like, we're building something here with Gunther. I'm seeing him, and I think he can run with this title for like a year. That's just my opinion. But nonetheless, that'll probably be the main event for Crown Jewel. I can't see any other match main eventing it. And that's not the only event, premium live event, that we have scheduled for the WWE in the next couple weeks. In fact, we have Halloween Havoc for the NXT brand. Again, at the timing of this recording, we only have a few matches scheduled. Excuse me. We do have the NXT champion, Trick Williams, defending his title against All Ego, Ethan Page again. We have it's a tables, ladders, and scares match, which I'm assuming TLC, between Obafemi and Tony D'Angelo for the NXT North American title. And of course, the dream tag team matchup that is Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez versus Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. Should be a fantastic card. We so far only have the 3 matches, but those 3 matches in itself, for me, are enough to check it out. So looking forward to that. On the flip side, let's talk about All Elite Wrestling real quick. All Elite Wrestling, their main storyline at the time is Jon Moxley and the BCC. The way they built up to that Bryan Danielson matchup was kind of shaky for some. We didn't really get a lot of answers, and it was kind of shotgun in a way. I feel like it was kind of, I don't know what I want to say. Not forced, but I feel like we zoomed past it. Jon Moxley voiced his displeasure with All Elite Wrestling. He says we're not where we used to be. You have people celebrating, dancing, and just overly happy for what? He says we lost sight of who we are. He hates what AEW has become. He's finding himself as the de facto leader of AEW. He needs to see other people step up. So what he did to Bryan Danielson, he used him as an example that nobody is safe. If that is someone he considered a friend, a mentor, and he was willing to do what he did to him, no one is safe. And I think it's a good way to kind of reset All Elite Wrestling, because they've been in a rut as of late when it comes to creative. Now, match quality, no, but in terms of storyline, in terms of the fan attendance and the viewership, a little shaky for them. But I'm hoping they use this as a wave of momentum to catapult them into a better place, because now you have a compelling story that involves many different players. We've seen guys like Danny Garcia and Private Party step up. We've seen the hints of Orange Cassidy involved. Darby Allin, of course, I think will fulfill that role of Sting when Sting was going against the NWO. This, I think, is a way to try to elevate and force the OGs of AEW to step up. All the guys I just named have been with AEW since day one. This is their way of stepping up. It's a plan by design. I think Moxley ultimately wants to create more competition within AEW. Their slogan is where the best wrestle. Well, how about the best step up? And they defend AEW. I'm a fan of it. I know there's a lot of people out there who weren't a fan of how the pay-per-view had concluded, but it's all a means to leading into the next story, leading into the next show. How am I going to maintain the level of interest of the audience? How am I going to encourage them and entice them to come back? And that ending of that pay-per-view did that for me. It made me want to come back and see what was going to happen on Dynamite and how we're going to move forward, how we're building towards full gear. The only question I have here is because we now introduced the Elite into the fold this past week on Dynamite. We saw how the Elites, the Young Bucks, and Okada reacted to the BCC, and it was an interesting contrast of heels because the Elite are kind of portrayed as these like cartoony heels, these villains who we can't really take too serious. Obviously, they're annoying and we don't like them. But when you put them up against the menacing and demented actions of the BCC, you can clearly see which one is a bigger threat to AEW. And that's why when they talked to them, I think it was a Private Party and Danny Garcia who had confronted the Elite and saying like, don't you want to do something? This is your company. And I feel like regardless of which end of the spectrum they fall on, the Young Bucks and the Elite should be invested in this from a kayfabe standpoint. Because if I'm the Young Bucks, why wouldn't they be involved? If I'm the Young Bucks and I'm looking at it from a heel standpoint, the BCC wants to take over AEW. They want to set an example. They want to reset AEW. The Young Bucks should be invested, right? Because if I'm the Young Bucks, you want to reset it while we're on top? No, that doesn't fly by me. This is our company. It is in our vision. We created this company. You're not taking it down. Versus, okay, you want to take over this company. Well, what if we work together? We don't like these guys either. The Elite can become even bigger heels by joining the BCC, or they can become logical EVPs by protecting their assets. Now, granted, it was only the one-off, and we have to see what they do moving forward, and that's the thing about pro wrestling. Sometimes you just got to wait it out and see where we go from here. If it doesn't go nowhere, that's a massive disappointment and a missed opportunity. But I would like to think that they didn't do that for no reason. It's setting things in motion. At least that's what I would like to think. But I do think that they should be involved. You saw how it's kind of lit a fire under guys like the Dark Order and guys like Top Flight, who both had matches this past weekend against the BCC. One on Collision, one on Battle of the Belts, but the BCC would go on to defeat both of them. So that kind of eliminates them from the equation. That was a stepping stone for the BCC, for them to elevate themselves and go over, make themselves look strong. But I can't see them as credible threats anymore. They're done with. The way that they were able to dispatch them, they're not coming back from that. You have to do some serious character rehabilitation for them. The Dark Order, who has, quite frankly, been irrelevant for the longest, ever since Hangman Adam Page had won the AEW World Championship, and that was back in the fall of 2021. What has the Dark Order done as of note? They took over the Young Bucks BTE YouTube page. Who, and I mean, like, you have to be a real one to keep up with that. Other than that, what have the Dark Order done? Top Flight, they're fine. They are who they are. I'm not expecting them to be the top trios team in AEW. They did have potential there where they were teasing a little bit of dissension between Action and the other members of Top Flight. But that seemingly has been negated for the purpose of this story. But now I look at them and I'm like, okay, well, the BCC already beat them in convincing fashion. let's move on. The guys I'm invested in right now are Danny Garcia, Private Party, who I was wrong. I will say that they lost to the Young Bucks at this past event, Wrestle Dream, and I was afraid that buried, they're done. But the crowd support was there. We're now building them up as sympathetic baby faces, and they're one of the teams that are willing to step up. So between Private Party, between Danny Garcia, Orange Cassidy, who is a little shaky right now, he says, I'm not that guy, I'm not a leader. I love it, because that leads me to believe that we're having some kind of redemption arc for Orange Cassidy. He's not the hero that he thinks he is, but I think he's going to be a huge player when it comes to the storyline. Other guys, of course, Hook. Big fan of Hook. Big fan of Darby. As I said, he needs to be the leader. He needs to be the top guy when it comes to this revolution, when it comes to this resistance to the BCC. He should be the one to unseat Moxley as the champion. I hope that's the route they go. Now, it's a question of how soon do they want to pull that trigger, because I think they should let it stretch out a little bit. Let us really hate Moxley. Let us really hate the BCC and yearn for that victory the way we had to yearn for Hangman Adam Page to win that title. They could have gave it to us at Grand Slam. They could have gave it to us at Double or Nothing. They could have gave it to us a little earlier, but they waited until the fall. Full Gear. Now, I'm not saying Full Gear is the event where you do it, because that's just the next one. But maybe you do it at World's End. Maybe World's End. Maybe Revolution. Revolution, I think, might be pushing it, but it would mark a year since Sting had retired and Darby Allin had to go solo. Don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions in regards to the BC storyline, in regards to Cody and Kevin. Who do you think will win the tag team tournaments that will crown new #1 contenders? I want to hear your guys' comments, your concerns, and if you liked this episode of the podcast, give the video an up. If you guys want to comment down below and join the discussion, please do so. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so in order to keep up to date with all things pro wrestling. And of course, my name's Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the podcast. And I'll be seeing you guys real soon.